I found the envelope tucked behind the utility bills, wedged between the gas statement and a coupon flyer for the grocery store. My hands were still damp from washing the dishes. I remember that detail because the paper got a little soft at the corner when I picked it up. It was addressed to my son-in-law, not to my daughter. Just to him. I set it on the counter and finished drying my hands. Then I stood there for a long moment, looking at the return address. Whitfield Capital Management, Private Wealth Division. I didn't open it. I'm not that kind of woman. But I didn't throw it away either. Let me go back, because none of this makes sense unless you understand how we got here. How I went from being the proudest mother at my daughter's wedding to standing in her kitchen at 63 years old, holding an envelope that was about to unravel everything I thought I knew about the man she married. My daughter's name is Lily. She was always the steady one. Not flashy, not dramatic. She got her father's practicality and my stubbornness, which is either the best combination or the worst, depending on the day. She became a physical therapist, worked her way up at a rehabilitation center in Columbus, Ohio, and at 34, she was doing just fine on her own. Better than fine, actually. She owned a small house, drove a reliable car, had money in savings. I raised her to need nobody, and I was proud of that. Then she met him. His name was Emmett Cole. She introduced him to me on a Sunday afternoon in late October. And I remember thinking he had the kind of face you trusted immediately. Warm eyes, easy smile, the sort of man who makes you feel like he's genuinely interested in what you're saying. He was 38, a few years older than Lily, and he told me over coffee that he was a musician. Independent, working on his second album. That's wonderful, I said, because what else do you say? After he left, I asked Lily how long they'd been seeing each other. 4 months, she said. I asked if he had a regular income. She paused, just a half second, but I caught it and said he did some session work, some teaching on the side, and that his music was starting to get attention online. I nodded. I made more coffee. I kept my mouth shut, which if you knew me, you'd understand is one of the hardest things I've ever done. They moved in together about 6 months later, into her house. He brought his guitars and a recording setup he set up in her second bedroom, which had been her home office, which she cleared out entirely to make room for him. I helped her move the desk to storage. I carried boxes. I smiled. My husband, Lily's father, had passed 4 years before this. Pancreatic cancer, 6 weeks from diagnosis to gone. After that, I sold the house in Dayton and moved into a smaller place in a community just 20 minutes from Lily. I needed to be near her. She needed to be near me, even if neither of us said it out loud. So I was around. I came over for Sunday dinners. I watched what was happening in that house. Emmett was, I'll give him this, genuinely talented. I heard him play once, really play, and even I had to admit the man had something. He'd sit at the piano in the living room sometimes and just go, improvising these long, wandering pieces that made the whole house feel different. Lily would stand in the doorway listening with this look on her face I hadn't seen since she was a little girl watching her father build things. She loved him. That was real. But love doesn't pay the mortgage. The first time I noticed something was about 8 months into them living together. Lily mentioned, very casually, that they were getting a new water heater. I asked if they'd found a good deal. She said Emmett's session work had been slow lately, so they were putting it on her card, but it was fine. It was just temporary. I said okay. 6 weeks later, she mentioned that his car needed brake work. She'd covered it. I said okay again. Then there was the recording equipment upgrade. He needed a better interface, better monitors. The old ones were affecting the mix quality. Lily had done her research, found a good deal on a package from a music shop in Cincinnati. A little over $2,000. She seemed almost excited about it, the way you get excited about a gift you're giving someone you love. I asked if he'd contributed anything. She said he was going to pay her back when the album came together. I took a breath. I said, "Lily, honey, when is that going to be?" She looked at me the way she'd looked at me when she was 16 and I'd asked about a boy I didn't approve of. "Mom, I know what I'm doing." I believed her because she'd never given me reason not to. They got engaged the following spring. He proposed at a restaurant she loved, a nice Italian place downtown, and he'd arranged for the staff to bring out a small cake with her favorite flowers on it. White peonies. She called me from the parking lot afterward, still crying. I cried too. I asked later, when things were calmer, how he'd paid for the ring. It was a beautiful ring, not enormous, but tasteful. A vintage-style setting with a small oval stone. She said he'd saved up for months. I thought, months. Saved up from what? I didn't say that. I bought the dress for the engagement photos instead. The wedding was modest. Lily didn't want a big production. She'd always said that, even as a girl. They rented a venue outside the city, maybe 60 guests, a buffet dinner. Her friend played acoustic guitar during the ceremony. Simple and lovely. I paid for the flowers because I wanted to. Emmett's family came from Michigan. His mother, 2 brothers, a handful of cousins. Nice people. Normal people. His mother, a quiet woman named Rose, sat next to me during the reception for a little while. We made the small talk you make at these things. She asked if I lived close to Lily. I said 20 minutes. She nodded and said she was glad Lily had family nearby. I asked carefully whether Emmett's music career had been going well. She got a slightly careful look of her own. "He's always done things his own way," she said, "since he was a boy." I filed that away. The first year of their marriage was fine on the surface. Lily kept working full shifts at the rehab center. Emmett taught a few music lessons out of the house, maybe 6 or 7 students a week, and continued recording. The album was perpetually almost done. He was always in the final stages, always on the verge of something. My sister called me once and asked how the son-in-law was settling in. I said, "Fine." She said, "Is he working?" I said he was a musician. She said, "That's not what I asked." I told her to mind her business and then spent the next hour staring out my window, thinking about exactly what she'd asked. I started noticing small things. When they came to my house for the holidays, Emmett always seemed comfortable, unhurried, not anxious the way a person is when they're scraping by. He dressed simply but well, good quality, nothing flashy. He drove an older car, a 10-year-old Subaru, but it was always clean, always maintained. He never complained about money, never deflected when it came up in conversation. He just didn't bring it up. Lily, on the other hand, sometimes looked tired in a way that wasn't physical, a behind-the-eyes tired. I brought her lunch at work one Thursday. We sat in the break room. I asked her directly whether things were okay. She said yes. I asked if Emmett was contributing to the household. She was quiet for a moment, then said he paid for groceries and utilities, but that the mortgage and bigger expenses were still mostly her. "He's building something, Mom," she said. "Some things take time." "How much time?" I asked. She didn't answer. They'd been married about 2.5 years when she told me she was pregnant. I hugged her in my kitchen and cried for the second time over this relationship. But these were different tears, pure joy, no complications. A grandchild. Finally, something that had nothing to do with money or worry or the tight feeling I'd been carrying in my chest for 2 years. I threw myself into preparations. I bought things. I reorganized my spare room into a place where the baby could sleep when they visited. I started knitting, which I hadn't done in 15 years. Lily was 7 months along when I came over on a Thursday to drop off some things I'd bought at a baby consignment sale. She wasn't home from work yet. Emmett was in the studio. That's what they called the second bedroom now. The studio. He let me in, said she'd be back in an hour, offered me tea, and went back to what he was doing. I put the baby things in the nursery. I straightened up a little in the kitchen, because I'm that kind of mother-in-law. I was wiping down the counter near the built-in desk where they kept their household papers, the spot where the bills lived, the folder for the car insurance, the little basket for incoming mail, when I saw the envelope. Woodfield Capital Management, Private Wealth Division, addressed to Emmett Cole. My hands went still. I stood there for what felt like a long time, which was probably 30 seconds. I picked it up. I looked at the return address again. I set it back down. I finished wiping the counter. I refilled my tea. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and waited for my daughter to come home. When Lily came in, she looked exhausted. The good, busy exhaustion of a working pregnant woman. Nothing alarming. She hugged me, took her shoes off, sank into the couch. I brought her a glass of water. We talked about the baby things I'd brought, about her last doctor's appointment, about a new therapist they'd hired at her clinic. I let 20 minutes pass. Then I said, "There's an envelope for Emmett on the counter." From an investment firm. She glanced toward the kitchen. "Oh, probably junk mail." "It's from a private wealth management division," I said. She looked at me. "I didn't open it," I said quickly. "I would never." "But Lily, private wealth management, that's not junk mail. That's not something you get unless you have a relationship with them." She was quiet. "Has he mentioned anything like that to you?" I asked. She said no. We sat with that for a moment. "Maybe it's a solicitation," she said, but she said it like a question. "Maybe," I said. She got up and went to the kitchen. I heard her pick it up, heard her set it back down. She came back to the couch and sat, and I could see her working through it, the way she'd always worked through things, methodically, refusing to jump to conclusions before she had information. "I'll ask him," she said. "Okay," I said. I drove home and didn't sleep well. She called me 2 days later. "I asked him," she said. "We had a long conversation. I waited." "He has money, Mom." Her voice was steady, but I could hear what was underneath it. "He has a lot of money. His grandfather left him a trust. He's had it since he was 25. He's never touched the principal. The account has. It's grown over the years. The current value is just under $3 million. I sat down. $3 million, I said. "Yes." "And in the 3 years you've been together, the water heater, the recording equipment, the car repairs, the mortgage." "I know." Lily. Bowie. "I know, Mom." I made myself slow down. What did he say? What was his explanation? She was quiet for a moment. "He said when he was 29, he was with someone for 2 years who he later found out had known about the trust from the beginning, that she'd worked her way in, that when they broke up, she tried to contest part of it. He said it changed the way he thought about relationships. He said he needed to know that someone loved him for who he was, not what he had." I absorbed that. "He said he was going to tell me," she continued. "He'd been planning to tell me before the baby came. He said he was going to put the house in both our names and set up a college fund. He said," her voice cracked slightly, "he said he knows it was wrong to let me carry everything. He knows it. He said he's ashamed of it." The line was quiet. "Mom, are you there?" "I'm here," I said. "I'm just thinking." "I'm thinking too." "Are you angry?" I asked. "I don't know what I am," she said. I'm angry and I understand it, and I wish I could separate those two things, but I can't right now. That's honest, I said. I don't know what to do with it. I thought about her father, about the years he'd worked double shifts when we were young and money was tight, never once complaining, never once letting me carry it alone, about what it meant to share a life with someone, about how trust gets built and how it gets broken, and whether those two things can exist in the same story at the same time. You don't have to know right now, I said. You have time. The weeks that followed were hard in a quiet way. Lily and Emmett went to couples counseling, her idea, and he agreed without hesitation. She told me they talked, really talked, in ways they hadn't before. He was, by her account, genuinely remorseful, not defensive, not making excuses beyond the explanation he'd given. He came to see me on a Saturday morning, about 3 weeks after she and I had spoken. He called first and asked if he could come over. I said yes. He sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd raised Lily, where her father and I had had every hard conversation of our 31 years together. And he looked at me like a man who knew he deserved whatever was coming. I didn't yell. That's not my way. I said, Emmett, that girl worked herself to the bone carrying a household that you could have helped carry at any time. She did it because she loved you. She did it while pregnant. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Yes, he said. Do you understand that my job as her mother is to ask you directly whether you understand that this cannot happen again? Not the money, the secrecy, the letting her work harder than she needed to while you stood by. I understand, he said. I was a coward. I told myself I was protecting something, but I was also just avoiding something hard. That's not the same thing. I looked at him for a long moment. You love my daughter, I said. It wasn't a question. More than anything, he said, and his voice, when he said it, was the same voice I'd heard playing piano in their living room. Something unguarded in it. Something true. Then act like it, I said, from here on. He nodded. I got up and made him breakfast, because that's also my way. My granddaughter was born on a Thursday in early spring. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. She had Lily's mouth and Emmett's eyes and her grandfather's nose, which made me cry on the spot in a way I couldn't have predicted. They named her June, after no one in particular, Lily said, just because it sounded like something warm. A month after June came home, Emmett transferred the house fully into both their names. He set up an education account. He and Lily are in the process of doing the financial and estate planning they should have done at the beginning, doing it together now, transparently, with a financial advisor they see quarterly. He still plays music. The album actually did come out, quietly, on a small independent label, and it got some respectful reviews in a few places. He's teaching more now, has a studio roster of about 15 students, and from what Lily says, he's genuinely good at it. The kids love him. She looks less tired. That behind-the-eyes exhaustion is gone. I still come over on Sundays. I still notice things because that's just who I am. But what I notice now is different. I notice him clearing the table before she gets to it. I notice him spelling her at 2 in the morning with the baby so she can sleep. I notice the way he looks at Lily when she's not looking, the way her father used to look at me. That look doesn't lie. I'm 63 years old. I've buried a husband and raised a daughter mostly on my own after that. And I've learned that people are capable of real change when they're forced to confront the truth about themselves. Not everyone. But some people. Emmett is one of them, I think. I'm watching. I told Lily last Sunday while we were washing dishes together while he put June down for her nap that I thought things were going to be okay. She handed me a wet plate to dry and said, "I know, Mom." "You were always the steady one," I said. She smiled. "I learned from somewhere." June started crying from down the hall, and Emmett's voice drifted out, low and quiet, the beginning of something improvised, something that settled the whole house. I stood there with a dish towel in my hands and thought about the envelope on the counter, and the water heater, and the recording equipment, and the ring, and the October afternoon when I first met him, and thought he had an honest face. I thought about how you can be right about a person and wrong about them at the same time, how the same man can disappoint you in one chapter and earn your trust in the next. The crying stopped. The music kept going. I finished drying the dishes. I keep coming back to that envelope, the way it was just sitting there between the gas bill and a grocery coupon, like it was nothing. Like it hadn't been sitting in my daughter's house while she worked double shifts and put a water heater on her credit card and cleared out her home office so her husband could record music. I've thought about what made Emmett do what he did and what made Lily endure it, and what made me stay quiet as long as I did. None of us were entirely innocent in how that situation was allowed to go on as long as it did. That's the part people don't always want to look at. Not just the person who caused the harm, but the whole web of small silences and polite avoidances that let it continue. Emmett was not a bad man. I believe that now the way I believed it the morning I sat across from him at my kitchen table and watched him take accountability without flinching. But he made a choice, repeatedly, over years, to let the woman he loved carry weight he could have shared. And no matter how understandable his reasons were, that choice had a cost. It cost Lily her energy, her peace of mind, something of her trust. Those things don't just evaporate because the explanation turns out to be complicated rather than cruel. Cause and effect doesn't care about intentions. What I've come to understand is that doing right by the people you love requires more than feeling the right things. It requires the courage to act honestly even when honesty is uncomfortable, even when the truth about yourself is something you'd rather keep protected. Emmett had spent years guarding a wound from his past, and in doing so, he created a new wound in someone else's present. That's how unexamined fear works. It doesn't stay contained. It spreads. Lily's strength through all of it, the years of carrying more than her share, then the harder work of deciding what to do with the truth once she had it, that came from somewhere she built herself. Not from having easy circumstances, from choosing over and over not to collapse under the weight of them. I watched her sit with her anger and her love at the same time and refused to let either one make the decision for her. That kind of steadiness isn't luck. It's something a person develops by facing hard things and not looking away. And what I know, at 63, having buried a husband and raised a daughter and learned more than I wanted to about how people disappoint each other and recover, is that wisdom is just paying attention long enough. It's noticing the half-second pause when someone answers a question. It's knowing the difference between an envelope that's junk mail and one that isn't. It's understanding that you can be right about a person's character and still not have the full picture of who they are. June is sleeping down the hall right now on the Sunday afternoons I come to visit. Emmett is usually in the kitchen. The behind-the-eyes tiredness is gone from Lily's face. Things are not perfect, nothing is, but they are honest now in a way they weren't before. And honesty, I've found, is the only ground anything real can grow on. I finished drying those dishes, and I'd do it all the same way again.